Good evening, friends and family, and thank you for coming to another night with Behind Black Business, sponsored by Repair, Restore, and Grow Black Communities. And this is 2023. We're going to start our year off continuing to work with collective work and responsibility, which is what we really need to be doing, which is one of our principles of Kwanzaa. And we have a wonderful guest for you tonight, Tutrel Onli. And Tutrel is a wonderful person in our community. He's made some major contributions in the art world, and we are so proud to have him on our show. And Tutrel, I want to thank you for coming tonight.
Well, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure and honor. I'm humbled with the opportunity as well as excited about it.
All right, all right. So as you know, family, we're a nonprofit organization and we're working to circulate that dollar in our community. And by doing that, we are uplifting our Black-owned businesses because they have the ability to help us circulate those dollars. Just by the nature of being a Black-owned business, supporting other Black businesses themselves and being role models to our children. Supporting our causes in our communities, working with people in their own families. And I mean, so just supporting a Black business, that dollar can't help but come back in resources and other ways to uplift the people in our community. And so that's why we have come together as an organization. We continue to help our businesses build websites. We continue to fight for our businesses. We continue to support our Black-owned banks, the Southside Community Federal Credit Union. And as you know, we are great proponents of reading. Reading is very important to learn about our history, learn our perspectives, develop knowledge and continue to create as the creative people that we are. And that's why we support our Black-owned bookstores. And we do continue our book giveaway. We did have a winner for our book giveaway for last month, and that was Janice Jones. Congratulations, Janice. You are winning the 4-pack series from Asa Books. These are two wonderful women who have worked to put children's books together. One does the illustrations and the other one does the writings. So there are 4 books. That's the start of the day. That's the start of our night. Don't Run from the Sun and Shaping Families. Janice, you will receive all of those books, and you will be able to pick them up from the Underground Bookstore located at 1727 East 87th Street. We will pay the cost of the books. If for some reason you can't go to the store, you will still be able to contact Brother Yoel at 773-768-8869, and we will also cover the cost of shipping. We will be asking some responses from you about those books. If you read them, how you feel about them. Would you share them, or have you shared them? Some commentary about the book, and of course your experience with the bookstore. So that's what we're requiring from our subscribers. So if you want to be a winner of one of our books or our packages of books, we ask that you go to rrgbc.org and subscribe. And we also will continue our public policy piece, where we want our local libraries and we want our local schools to purchase books from our Black-owned bookstores here in Chicago. We once had 22. We were down to 2, but we do have a resurgence of Black bookstores in this city, and we want to support them. The Book Joint, the Underground Bookstore, Frontline will be reopening on North Howard Street. And then there's Semicolon, and there's Soulful Chicago, and there's a Rose Cafe, Burst Into Books. Asada Kirkland still has her Soulful Chicago Book Fair. So we want to continue to support these bookstores in Chicago. All right. So let's get on with our interview tonight. Tutrel Onli is an American artist. He's an entrepreneur, author, art therapist, educator, and publisher of Black comic books. And Tutrel, you present with a long list of accomplishments. I've been doing some reading on you, the contributions that you have made to the community within the areas of fine arts and applied visual arts. You've been producing works in painting, drawing, illustration, publishing, fashion, multimedia production. You have authored and illustrated numerous comic books and graphic novels. And one of your most important roles is you were a teacher at the Chicago Public Schools and has served as a professor. And so as we go into this interview, there was one quote that I saw about you as bringing the Black age of comics into our sphere. And I would like to tell you to tell us about that first.
Okay, thank you.
Comics.
The Black Age of Comics is a movement that I started in 1992. We launched it with the world's first ever totally Black produced Black Age of Comics convention. We gave it, we wanted to keep the spirits in proper alignment. We gave it at the Southside Community Arts Center. When I say the Black Age of Comics, I'm talking about comic books, graphic novels, children's books, animation, cartoons that come from a Black, African, urban, or independent perspective and derived from that experience. Mm-hmm. Give a little background. The comic book industry as we know it started in the United States in the late 30s, and that era is called the Golden Age. Then comic books went through a crisis. They were almost banned. They were highly censored. And when they had a rebirth, that was called the Silver Age, which kind of hit around the late 50s, early 60s. Then there was a period, believe it or not, called the Bronze Age. And so I used to make the rounds to major companies trying to get work in the industry. And I would send my portfolio. And when I show up, they'd be shocked that I was Black, right? They're like, did you really do that artwork? Okay. And then a couple of times, I had like execs at main companies that would say to me, do Black people read? And so I go to major comic book conventions and I noticed that at that time, now I'm talking the 70s, okay? Okay. And the early 80s. And so it was a lot of tension, a lot of Blacks, the few Blacks that worked in the industry were very uncomfortable because they were on thin ice professionally and all that. So I thought that we needed a movement, sort of like in the music industry, where you expect Black people to walk in the room, that it's not a shock. So I remember like when soul music hit in like, say, 64, 65, I remember seeing James Brown with a flip chart on the Dick Clark show explaining what soul was and what soul was not. So I'm thinking that's how you explain a genre. So I'm thinking of the Black Age of Comics as a genre and a movement, but one that we could control, with my trajectory being that we would dominate it and control the commerce. I think of it as a nexus of creativity, culture, and commerce. And so we always know and celebrate that we're highly creative, but then there's a misstep with the commerce part. What do I mean by commerce? Distribution. What do I mean? Ownership. What do I mean? Investment, getting the derivatives in terms of royalties, and making sure you had a copyright, the trademark, and things like that. And so I wanted to do the convention to really convene to process these commercial, legal ramifications and intangibles, because I realized a lot of Blacks that were freelancing, how can I put this, didn't have that acumen, didn't understand. For instance, I'm not going to name names because I don't work for these companies, but I can tell you some of their protocols. Well, I'll just do the whole experience. Okay. I went to one of these companies in about 1980 with a product of mine. I'm thinking I could get a licensing deal. Well, they made it clear, we don't do licensing deals for anybody, but what we'll do is we'll pay you $20,000 for all rights to your character. And I'm trying to negotiate with this person who's the vice president of this company in New York. So I'm looking for the book right here so I can put a visual to it. But let me just go with the story. So while we're in the conversation, one of his administrative assistants walks in with a check made out to me for $20,000. And when I flipped the check on the back, there was a long paragraph. So if you endorse the check, you agree to the following. And it said they owned anything you had done 5 years prior to the signing of the check, because you wouldn't have done it unless you wanted to work for them, and 5 years after the signing of the check. Now, right there, that's 10 years. And for the character in question, they owned all rights, you had no residuals, and you couldn't tell anybody that you sold them the character. So back then, we didn't have a shredder. I'm just tearing it up in little pieces. And it's creating a problem in the office because they couldn't believe I'm going to say no to this. Well, of course I'm going to say no. 10 years of my creative life? Forget it. And then I found out that was routine in the industry. This was not like something they were doing because I was young and Black. This is how they operate. And so I wanted, in terms of the Black age of comics, because, you know, you get more of an entrepreneurial undercurrent because most independent Black publishers produce their products, but a lot of them didn't understand the copyright process. So a lot of people, you know, there's kind of like an urban legend that if you have something, you put it in an envelope and you send it to yourself registered mail, you could go to court later and open the envelope in front of a judge and win your case. Well, you cannot, because that's not a registered copyright. Okay. See, that's not a registered copyright. You got to register it with the Library of Congress, go through their protocols, and they will send you the certificate. In fact, if you don't do it properly, they'll explain to you what you need to do, how to do it, and help you get it done. So we started the convention in 1993 in Chicago. In 92, I wrote an article on what the Black Age of Comics, kind of a manifesto, and I had it published in, there was a trade journal back then that covered the entire industry called Comics Buyer's Guide. So I copywrote the article before I turned it over to them to publish it. So then this hit. Our network, the Black Age of Comics, we give an independent convention in New York at the Schomburg. We give one in Philly called ECBAC. That's the biggest one, and it's the best organized one. We give one in Detroit called Motor City, Black Age of Comics. In Atlanta, it's called OnyxCon. Now, each one is autonomous, but behind the scenes, we help each other out. You know, we network, we send resources, we take out ads. You know, like you're talking about spending money in the community. We spend money with each other. You know, if they come to my event, they get a free table. You know, if I can't make it to their event, I take out an ad in their program book, or I'll send one of my reps to go set up and take out the ad. You know, and so that has grown in a way that the mainstream, now you got to understand the mainstream, they pay attention to everybody because they know how they got there. They started small. They didn't start as big as you see them now. And they went through a lot of infighting to figure out who's going to be top dog, who's going to control the money. So they look at what we're doing kind of like a feeder system. Now, I don't have a problem with anybody that works mainstream. I have had mainstream clients. I used to be a courtroom illustrator for WGN for a number of years. I did album covers for different companies. You know, I was a contract illustrator with Holt, Reinhardt, and Winston. It helped get me through graduate school. So I am not going to ever have a complaint against anybody going for a legitimate job and make money. I just think we should have a thing of our own. Sure. Where we can operate. For instance, I've hired people whenever I could. You know, my budget's not that big. I pay what I can, and I mentor on top of it so that they're getting that intangible payment in terms of how to make their transition from, how could I put it, dedicated, gifted student to being, you know, entry-level professional and sometimes beyond that. So, you know, we've done that with young men and young women across the nation. The Black Age movement, we've been covered by NPR. We've been on Final Call. We've been in Time Magazine. We were covered in Vibe Magazine, the Source Magazine. We send out flyers. We on TV, all that. So I'm always dismayed who doesn't know about us, but I'm always excited, you know, to talk about it, because if they don't know, then, you know, it's my role to just keep letting them know that this is out here. And it's independent. You know, what do I mean by independent? These are independent publishers that are creating their own products and bringing it to the market as best they can. So a lot of times you'll see us, like we used to do the old Black Expo network, like Black Expo in Kansas, Black Expo in Detroit. And you know, we would do that. With the advent of the internet, you know, we sell online. My company, we've produced more than 20 independent books and launched different characters, and we make sure we own the rights before we put it on the market. And so that has been something that, how can I put it, has always been important to me from when I was, you know, a small kid. So yeah, my roots are in Chicago. I went to Calumet High School, graduated class of '69. And I ended up at Olive Harvey when it first opened. In fact, I was at Southeast Community College when it was a section of CVS High School before it went out to 103rd. And then I ended up at the School of the Art Institute, where I got my bachelor's and then ultimately my master's. But I've always been one to come home to do the creative work. But what was important to me was not just to do the creative work and from an ego standpoint, get published, make some money, but to control my ideas. So that's where copyright is important. And what you have to remember with copyright is you got to legally register it with the Library of Congress. So when I was making the rounds with these mainstream publishers, I go in with my portfolio, but all my ideas were copywritten before I showed up. So, you know, you can't copyright the idea, but you can copyright your manifestation of the idea.
Sure.
So that's what you like. Like everybody can do a love song, but they can't do your love song.
Absolutely.
But you might be the first one with a love song that they've ever heard about. And so, you know, it's scaffolds like that. So I always say, when people talk about representation, I say, follow the money. Where's the money go?
Absolutely.
Because money is the real representative.
Absolutely.
So the idea of representation, back in the day, we used to call it tokenism, because these individuals, while high profile and often highly paid, which is fine with me, but I don't want to make it out to something it's not. They're not controlling the money. And
well, so, I think one of the most ludicrous comments that you made at the beginning was when you brought your work to this company, and there was the question of whether Black people are reading, you
Yeah.
know, these comics. And I grew up reading comic books, you know,
Yeah.
but there weren't Black comic books. There were white comic books. There were white comic strips. There was Dick Tracy. There was, you know, Lil Lotta, you know, all that kind of stuff. And I actually went online, and I don't know if this is familiar to
Oh
you.
yeah, all Negro comics.
All
All
Negro
right. Yeah,
comics.
all Negro
Uh-huh.
comics.
And they had one edition, you
One
know.
edition.
But you know, what you're describing is what so many, you know, Black people have had to go through in terms of trying to protect their own creations. And there's someone there, there's this entity there that wants to control and ultimately benefit, you know, off of what you yourself have created.
Oh,
But it
they
certainly wasn't because Black people weren't reading comic books. You know, that was a racist statement, you know, to me,
well,
to
well,
say the least, you know.
well, it was, but I felt sorry for him because I'm thinking, dude, who did this to you to make you think that? That's abusive.
Absolutely.
That's abusive. You know.
Absolutely.
And so
Very,
I
very
thought I'm
abusive.
gonna do you a favor. When I get back to Chicago, I'm gonna throw down and launch the Black Age of Comics. You can learn so you can get over that
Okay.
because being stupid ain't good for nobody.
Absolutely.
And,
Absolutely.
and see, I came up in the city of Chicago. My grandfather was a Pentecostal pastor. He raised me from age 2, and he did charts. He made huge charts that he used for his sermons. So I grew up thinking everybody drew, and of
Okay.
course, I read comic books, and I just wanted to be an artist. I didn't know there was a difference from fine art to commercial art to doing fashion illustration. And I just wanted to do it all. And of course, in some way, I've done a lot of it, and still doing it. But the thing that I learned from my grandfather, because he owned property in Bronzeville and also in Hyde Park, it gave me a sense of what it meant to own something. And so
Okay.
intellectual properties like a patent or a trademark or a copyright, how can I put it? It's like owning acres of land.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not much is happening yet, but somebody's going to come along and want to do something with that land and want to know who owns it. And so that's when you pull out your deed of ownership. So your copyright or your trademark or your patent is your deed of ownership. And you got to see it as a positive, and you got to see it as an extension of the creative process so that you add the commerce part to it. And this becomes a big asset. You mentioned
That's a
something
wonderful
about getting
analogy.
you mentioned something about getting books in the public schools. I was a public school teacher. I worked there long enough to retire. Okay.
Okay. Yeah,
Uh,
that was going to be my next question. Is I
okay.
wanted you to talk about your experience in Chicago public schools.
I worked in 8 different schools, 3 elementary schools, 5 high schools. I also coached 3 different sports. I coached girls varsity basketball, boys varsity volleyball, and chess. Okay. Um,
So all
and
of your work was not as an art teacher?
well, that's you be an art teacher and you coach. That was
Oh,
extracurricular. So,
okay.
at the end of the day, I'm running to the gym to do practice or doing the bus. And as a coach, you have to do all the administrative stuff. You got to pay the referees, you got to organize the games, you got to get vetted in first aid. There's an intense background check. You
Mm-hmm.
got to schedule the referees. You got to make sure their check is. You got to have their check ready for them before the game, or there is no game. Okay, it's a whole lot that goes on in that. And, I worked at schools sometimes that didn't have art supplies. I'd have to bring them in myself. And that's not unusual in the Chicago public schools.
Mm-hmm.
I worked at schools where I had to be a part of the school improvement plan to justify why an art teacher should even be in the building. Okay.
Hmm.
And so I'd have to do work in relationship to the funding and things like that. And because I had a background as a therapist, before I got to the Chicago public schools, I was a clinical art therapist. So
Okay.
I worked at battered women's shelters. I worked at therapeutic day schools. I had some programs of my own. And so I understood the therapeutic process. So a lot of times, like if a student had an IEP when I was in the public school, I tried
Sure.
to sit in on the IEP meeting. That's the individual treatment plan
Educational
at,
program.
IEP, at the
Hmm.
independent educational program for a special needs student.
Yes.
And so a lot of times they would just simply say the student has a learning disability. Well,
Hmm.
that's not a diagnosis. That's not an analysis with a treatment plan that can be monitored to see if your child improves. But in that era, if the parent at an IEP meeting asked for therapy, the system would have to pay for therapy.
Right.
So with the learning disability, they offer educational supports, which is a good thing, which
Sure.
is a very good thing. But there are other issues that need to be addressed that a lot of times didn't get addressed. And so what I would do, I would have art club after school and
Hmm.
invite a lot of special needs students to be in art club. And it was really art therapy, but the system didn't like the word therapy. Even now they don't like the word therapy. They call it social emotional learning.
Okay.
Okay. So
Okay.
they have these terms. And so, but I worked, like I said, different schools. I saw a lot of good things going on. One thing I wanted to say about your narrative about getting books in the classroom.
Hmm.
Every public school teacher has a small fund.
Sure.
If they buy what they think is needed for their classroom, now it used to be $100 a semester. I was told, I'm not in the system anymore. Please look it up, those that are interested, that it's now $250 a semester. In
Hmm.
other words, if you went to Freedom Found or the Underground Bookstore, or if you went to the Trading Post gift shop at the DuSable Museum and said, I need to buy this for my class, you take
Sure.
the receipt to your principal, the principal would reimburse you. And so if you're teaching Black history, African American history, cultural arts, whatever it is, and you can't find the material through the vetted channels, then
Hmm.
you can do this and you would get compensated. So that,
I would also want to add to that, that yes, the materials may not be available through the vetted channels, but to take it upon yourselves as Black teachers to look for those books in our Black bookstores first.
mhm.
To go there first. We're talking about a change of consciousness and thought process in terms of
Well,
where we're going to get our books. And of course, when you go to these bookstores, there are going to be books there that you didn't know about,
mhm.
you know and conversations that you can have. And so just for that experience, you should go to the Black bookstores first.
Oh, without a doubt, and
Sure.
also the DuSable Museum. It's there for a reason.
Sure.
It's been there a long
Sure.
time.
Sure.
And so, these things, for myself as an educator, these
Hmm.
things would happen. So, when I wasn't teaching, I was doing my artwork in the Black Age. I was doing it before I was a teacher, so I never stopped doing it.
So how do you see art as being important in the development of our children?
Oh,
Yes.
the visual arts process is part of what makes us actually human. There's a lot of research that has quantified that what gives us the big brain and the neural capability was the ancestors in the cave that would take the stick out of the fire and start putting something on the wall, and we all watched, and the ancestor would tell us what it represented, and we would learn.
Hmm.
Then here comes something else, and we learn more, and we learn more, and then that becomes the alphabet. But the alphabet was based on what? Images, you know, that were processed down to what we call symbols, processed down to letters, processed down to words, and the cognition grows, the cognitive capacity grows.
Mm-hmm.
So visual, see, like the brain is, it's a lot of proof, and people argue these points. They argue them all the time, but when you get in the classroom, you see it. You have kinesthetic intelligence, which means people that have a propensity to move and learn by doing. So they're more dynamic learner.
Mm-hmm.
You have people that are auditory, so they learn by listening. You have other people that it's visual, they see it. We all process all this together.
Sure.
Of course, it's the same thing with the musical acumen. So there have been studies that have shown that when you take the arts in general, particularly the visual arts, out of a school system,
Mm-hmm.
that the performance level in other areas goes down.
Mm-hmm.
If you put it into the system, it goes up. Now, this is nothing new. The Nubians knew this. The Phoenicians knew this. The Mayans knew it. The Cantonese knew it. Everybody knew it. But it always has to be requantified. Look, the Teutonic people knew it. Everybody knows this. The Carthaginians knew it. That's why you can always chronicle people through their visual art. It's all because it's always known. Now, when you talk about reading comic books, one part of your brain takes care of words. The other part takes care of pictures.
Mm-hmm.
When you read in a comic book, you got to process both. Mm-hmm. That becomes another level of neural activity. That's why the average kid that's an avid comic book reader, when it's time for a standardized test, they treat that like it's a speed bump in the middle of their day, get a high test score, and keep reading. Mm-hmm. Okay, because they're reading all the time. Now, sometimes it is the actual content in the books, but it's this processing. So if you think of it like a cognitive workout, like lifting weights, doing Pilates, doing capoeira, then you're grooming the brain for later on when you have to focus. You have a better degree of focus and capacity and capability. And so when comic books get stereotyped, you'll hear people say, "Oh, comic books, that's junk. Those geeky, nerdy boys read it." Well, really what you should say is those smart, intelligent boys were reading it. And then you got to ask, were they smart and intelligent because they read it, or did they become smart and more intelligent because they kept reading it? Mm-hmm. And so, like, getting back with the Black Age of Comics, most of us, if you Google the Black Age of Comics and do the research, most of us are like college educated. We've been educators. A lot of us are still college professors. I still teach. I teach visual arts at Harold Washington College, and so, when we get together, we kind of laugh that we are kind of like the egghead movement that's come out of the Black community because that's there. And I'm not saying that's everybody. It's a total embrace, and we're not academic elitists. We're not even beginning to say that because we're not. But I'm just pointing out something that happened to be in the mix that is this kind of thing. And so, and we produce a lot of books. People use the term self-publishing. Well, that's a term that the mainstream created to sort of put down independent publishers. When you publish, you do everything that a larger publisher does. So either you're independent or you're a small publisher. But if you think you're a self-publisher, try doing something with Mickey Mouse and see how selfish Disney will be on you. Okay? Mm-hmm. Okay, they don't play that. All right? So it's not self-publishing, it's publishing. Everybody's got to edit. You got to do graphic design. You got to make some decision. You got to deal with print. You got to deal with distributors. You got to do marketing. You have to do everything in the process. And like most small businesses, a lot of times you're underfunded. You don't have the resources. So there are things that are not there. What I've always said to people, people like to point the finger. You didn't do this. You didn't do that. You didn't do this. I say, you know what? That's your job. If you'll do it, I give you a slice of the pie. If you're telling me that needs to be done and it's going to make things more profitable, you get that profit. And so sometimes they step in and help, people to edit. Sometimes they'll do graphic design. Rather, I pay them after the fact or up front. I give them credit, but the thing is, this is exactly how the mainstream got to be dominant, because the legal community came in and said, you need legal. You know, the editorial literary people came in and say, we could raise the threshold. We brought that in. It's always people that have a different skill set and specialization that contribute. So, you know, when you look at where these companies are now, they didn't get that way overnight. In my own
Sure.
operation, you know, we're a registered LLC. When we first put out our first book called Nog, the Protector of the Pyramids, NOG,
Okay.
it
Okay.
was based on Nubian artifacts and spirituality. And Nog is defending and protected planet Nuba. So we're talking about a black planet, a black planetary worldview. And one of the things that gets questioned in that book, why is it all the African black looking artifacts that come from Nubia, why is the nose chipped off? Like what did they hide when they chipped the nose off? You know, and saying, well, we don't know who these people really were. Well, you put the nose back on and it's obvious.
Mm-hmm.
But the point is, I put the book out, had red, black, and green cover. Now cover has dreadlocks. Book came out in '81, and we printed it in black and white. And so people would say, "Well, why'd you do it in black and white? Like you don't have any money?" I said, "Dude, do you understand? You ever seen what I could do with a pencil in black and white?" I said, "Black and white is infinite." Plus, at the time, I made reference, say, you know, there's a tributary called manga, and the original manga books were black and white. And I would say, well, their books are black and white. And they would say, well, they're supposed to be black and white. I'm like, well, why aren't mine supposed to be black and white if I say so? So, you know, you get through these, what do I call it? Barriers of resistance,
Sure.
questions, things like that. And so you have to have faith and confidence in what you're doing. And I believe in falling forward. You know, I kind of think like football. You know, you're right at the goal line and you fall back. Everybody looks like you were right there. Why did you go backward? You got to fall forward. You fall forward, you're the hero. It's like touchdown, you scored. You know, so you got to fall forward through these moments and take it in. So now we got a full range of publications, but we still do black and white.
Okay. So, wow, you said a whole lot there. You know, we were talking about the, you know, as you're talking, I'm thinking about our students and, you know, in the schools and the impact of, as you were describing, that art has on their neurological development, on their creativity, and ultimately folding over into other areas and influencing their abilities in other areas of their life. And you were talking about how there's studies to show the performance goes down, and that's what exactly happened in our Chicago public schools, because one of the first things when they started cutting that they took out was art and music,
Yeah.
you know, taking
Mhm.
that out of the school. And then what have we seen? You know, a decrease in the performance of our students. And
Mhm.
so this art form, this teaching art in our schools is very important for the
Mhm.
development of our children's minds, and for the development of ours, even as adults. If you could
Mhm.
speak to the importance of art in our culture.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
it's always there. It's
Mm-hmm.
always there. I mean, you look at how many elders that once they get to a certain point in life, they want to make some art, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, they want to
Absolutely.
make some art, right? It's crocheting, knitting, working on a puzzle, sculpture piece, and they're really committed to it. And you talk to them, they'll be like, well, I always wanted to do this. And so now I'm doing it.
Okay.
And the visual arts, all the creative arts has a healing byproduct, a kind of
Okay.
wellness generator. And then that's why, you know, when you're trained in therapy, I don't mean when you just say, I'm doing it, I'm calling it art therapy. I
Mm-hmm.
always say I'm good with an X-Acto knife. I could cut a straight line, but that does not make me a surgeon. So people who want to go into the expressive therapies should really be trained and vetted, because it's a delicate profession. But what I'm getting at is the like all cultures make their mark with their art. All people do it. We make artistic choices all day long and don't realize it, you know. And the processing is available in the public schools, and it starts early on. One of the things you learn from making art is that there's more than one solution to a problem.
Absolutely.
Okay, if you get 30 students, you give them one assignment. One assignment. Everybody's doing one assignment, but you walk around the room, they all look different. They've all earned the A with their own path in taking on the challenge of the assignment. And so that carries over to science, that carries over to math, it carries over to other areas where they become more flexible and diverse kind of thinkers.
Okay. Wow. Well, this is very interesting, and it's information that our people need to know. Just how relative the fundamental aspects of learning are, and something at the very basic level of art, and how important it is to our development. I know there was a quote that I read. You said a positive fantasy life is the foundation to a positive reality.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. For instance, I do an art therapy thesis kind of project with young people. So I have a 3-panel strip. I want you to draw in the first panel your past, in the second panel your present, and then your future. You'd be shocked how many draw themselves in the penitentiary, and they've been nowhere near a jail or in a cemetery, okay? Because their present life is overwhelmed with this negative fantasy life, okay? They don't have a playful fantasy life that's positive. It's negative. And you got to have a positive fantasy life to build on, that's going to result in a positive reality.
Sure.
And so almost every scientific invention that we're dealing with was somebody's fantasy baby at some point, with somebody's fantasy, And so if your fantasy life is overwhelmed with negativity, that's kind of where you're going to sustain yourself. And so with the Black Age of comics, most of the books are positive at one level or another. We talk about this. Now, I said most, not all of them. You get this unevenness. But, you need that. So, for instance, I have a book called Pumpkin's Imagination. And it's about a little boy who, when he's left alone, he conjures up positive playmates. So when he's left alone, he's not worried about a drive-by. He's not worried about a zombie under his bed that's going to hurt him. He's got a penguin that he can dance with that's got polka dots on him, and got an MP3 player. Or he's swimming with a catfish that's half cat and half fish, and he's playing with him. So he's got a positive, effusing fantasy life going on, instead of, oh my God, I'm not going to make it. And so this becomes really important. So if you spend time,
the other nice thing about comic books, with the different characters, there's this sense of power,
exactly.
This sense of strength, often good battling evil,
Yeah, it's a good morality tale.
development. There's this, but seeing Black children, seeing Black characters in these roles, what's his name, that did the movie Meteor Man? Was it Meteor Man?
Yeah,
Yeah, I can't
media.
think of his name. But
I
to
can
see, because all of the superheroes were always white, Superman. Uh, and so to have these characters in these books, and seeing them in these superhuman positions and situations, and then even the historical information, because I think you have taken some time to deal with the history, you know, some
Well, the
truths
history is
in our history.
that's the foundation. It's
Mm-hmm.
always coming from that. Like I have a character, Malcolm 10, and
Mm-hmm.
he's created from the DNA of 10 selected Black Americans. So he
Mm-hmm.
has their attributes. And the narrative in the story, his creator is referred to as Imhotep, the smartest man alive, who would have been a disciple of George Washington Carver. So he would
Mm-hmm.
have taken George Washington Carver's ideas with plants and brought it over to genetics. And
Right.
and Malcolm 10 has been raised in an incubator for 27 years and programmed to take on black problems.
Mm-hmm.
And the book's out, put in a plug. You can buy all my books either
Sure.
at onlystudios.com, ONLI. We sell them, we send them to you packaged. We pay for the postage. They come with oversized trading cards. Or you could go to the Trading Post gift shop at the DuSable Museum, and they sell them every day they're open. Now,
Well,
getting back to Malcolm 10 just for a hot minute. Here he is.
mm-hmm.
What does it say at the bottom? It's more than a black thing. Okay.
Okay.
And so now the legal end, show people this. This character came out in 92. This is the actual book. Let's see, where are we at? There we go.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You see that look? I introduced that look to the world.
Mm-hmm.
People look at that. I'm going to show you another page. Let's see. Can we get this there? I think we can.
Now that's in black and white.
Yeah, this is a black and white book.
Okay.
The color's covered. Make a
Okay.
long story short, the look of this character was co-opted to be the look of another character when they made a horror movie out of the character. But I'm not
Mm-hmm.
going to give brand names and all that. But
Okay.
we have a book out, and we have more Malcolm 10 stories.
Okay.
We have Sister Girl, Queen of the Black Age, and
Okay.
her mentor is the Root Lady, of course, and the Root Lady is in more. So we weave. What do we call it? We call it historical fiction. So we make sure. I'm saying only studios. There's some it's grounded in either real history or a folklore thing, and
Absolutely.
and in my books there's no profanity. There's action, but there's no mutilation. What a horror book! We got a horror book that's really horrible, but
Well, um I did purchase some of your books, and I in the trying to show the pictures here on the screen does not do justice to
yeah,
the color. This
yeah.
is nothing like what it looks like in real life, because when I was looking at this picture with the colors on this character,
Mm-hmm.
this is Nog.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
And these are you have comic books, you have graphic novels. I also picked
Mhm.
up
That's what there you go. That's full
rhythmic,
color.
rhythmic
Tales,
zone. There you go.
yeah, Tales from
Uh-huh.
the Rhythmic Zone is full color.
Sure.
It's actually four stories in there plus a
Mm-hmm.
poem that we purchased.
Yeah, this
It's
is some
written
of the
by. There you go. Right.
some of the pictures there.
Yeah.
These are beautifully illustrated, and then the stories, as you say, you know, it's
Mhm.
almost like a virtual reality kind of
Thank you.
experience
Yeah.
as you're reading these, because the pictures are so uh, beautifully done and beautifully illustrated. The colors,
Mhm.
and you can't help but read. I remember when I was a kid, they used to always have stories about porridge.
Mm-hmm.
And I loved hot
Mm-hmm.
cereal, any kind of cream of
Yeah.
wheat and malted meal away. And when I would see that porridge on
Oatmeal.
the page, I don't care how they drew it. I got hungry, and I could almost smell it, and it just took me into another dimension with the story and the
That's
characters.
that brain power. That's your brain.
Absolutely.
That's your
Absolutely.
brain rolling.
And
And the
another
other,
thing I was impressed with when I purchased the book were these, like these trading cards,
yeah.
and the information, the historical information that's on the back of the
Mm-hmm.
cards. And then you have the little icon here that will actually take you to your website. And then you can go there and see more and have an even more classic experience with your work. So the characters, you already mentioned Malcolm and the Root Lady,
Yeah.
Sasa.
Mm-hmm.
There
Mm-hmm.
was some others that I saw, Future
Future
Funk.
Funk. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
We first did Future Funk back in '82. So we've been
In
doing Future
82.
Funk. We've been doing Future Funk, and I refer to my word rhythmistic slash future, and I've been
Mm-hmm.
saying that since the '70s.
Okay.
When I first got on set, I started my career right out of high school.
Sure.
And back then in the world was different. You were young, nobody, because the elders ran everything. You had to you couldn't talk. I mean, if you were raised in the old Negro like me, said young fella, you just shut up, and
Okay.
stood at attention. And
Okay.
so showing them my artwork, they were like, well, nobody's ready for it. Or they would say, you ahead of your time. And then when I started freelancing, whenever I showed people what I really wanted to do, and when I say people, I'm talking about art direct major publishing companies, they always would say, you're ahead of your time or people aren't ready for it. So I'm thinking it must be
Mm-hmm.
futuristic then, isn't this what they do? And then I
Is this
realized
is this where your term rhythmism is it,
rhythmism,
or
rhythmism, rhythmism,
rhythmism? Okay.
rhythmism, like saying rhythm, but go rhythmism.
Rhythmism.
Yeah,
Okay.
I came up with the term. I started the Artist Guild in 1970 for young Black artists that wanted to make the transition from being a student to a professional.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the truth. So we kind of had a meeting. Now we were 18, 19, 20. So we were all talking one day and said, well, let's bring in the sketchbooks. So four of us who didn't know each other in high school brought in our high school sketchbooks, and they almost looked identical. Okay. What we were doing with doodling and scribbling had a lot of visual rhythm in it. That's
Mm-hmm.
not what we were doing when we were drawing. So it's kind of
Mm-hmm.
like when we were just letting it flow,
Mm-hmm.
all this visual rhythm was coming out.
Mm-hmm.
So from that came the term rhythmism, and then with the whole thing of we're not ready for you yet came future primitive, and then we started noticing as we would do things, then later on it would pop up elsewhere. When I say
Okay.
later on, sometimes 10, 20 years later.
Okay.
Most, you stay in the game long enough, you just kind of watch and say, okay. So
Now,
people,
do you have clothing attire? Do you
I spent,
t-shirts?
I used to do wearable art. We do a line of t-shirts still, but we used to do a lot of fabric painting and pay people to cut the fabric into garments and do fashion shows and sell them and things like that.
Okay.
At one time, being a fashion illustrator was actually a thing, and I did a lot of work as a fashion illustrator and even taught fashion illustration for a few years at Columbia College. But right now, I'm more focused on the printed product and wanting to expand on that to do animation and filmmaking.
Okay.
So like the garment I'm wearing, let's see, we can see a bit of it.
Okay. All right.
So,
Okay.
so you know, you might see some of that. And so,
Okay.
but that's more. This is more company promotional, not on the market.
Okay.
So, but you know, the politics of the fashion industry. How can I put it? We just moved away from it and focused more on print, and then we're going to go from print ultimately to animation and things like that.
Okay. Okay.
So some of our books have soundtracks. So if you get the book, it might be a CD in it, or it might be a QR code that'll take you to a music source.
Yes, that's what was on the I think the card here, it had a QR code on there.
Right, right.
Mm-hmm.
And so we even have a book. It's called Drawn for the Rhythmic Zone, and it virtually has no words in it.
Mm-hmm.
So that means whoever gets it gets to supply the narrative.
Wow.
They get to supply the narrative.
Wow.
Whether they want to write it in place or do it freestyling is up to them.
Okay.
So that book's too on sale at the DuSable Museum.
Okay. And what's that one called?
It's called Drawn for the Rhythmic Zone.
Drawn for the Rhythmic Zone. Okay.
Yes, it's
okay. And which one has a CD in it?
It's 100. The one that has the CD in it, and now you get, you know, we changed from the CD to a music video. It's called Team Blonda.
Okay.
So it has a CD in it.
Okay.
And CD and trading cards. And so I would contract musicians to compose theme music.
Sure.
For the characters. So so you know they're in on the, you know, they get paid every time a book sells, and you know we take care of that, and you know, but the idea is that it becomes more a multimedia experience.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So you get reading, you get to scan, you get reels, you know,
sure.
you get like music videos, or you get to play a CD if you still got a CD player. But if you don't have a CD player, we got other options. So you know, we provide all that.
And the trading cards are so important because that fosters, you know, learning about science, you know, just like students that would be trading sports types of cards. And then and there's so much to learn as you pass the cards on, you know, and get other people's cards, you know, it becomes a learning experience.
And trading cards adds value to the product. See, you get this book, it has an archival trading card in it.
Mm-hmm.
And our trading cards are twice the size of the ones that the mainstream sells you.
Yes, they are. Yes,
we give you ours. We give you ours free because we appreciate your support and your participation in what we do.
Absolutely.
So when you buy our books, you get a trading card, and trading cards do become collectible.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, all this is not a trading card. This is the back cover for the Sister Girl workout book.
Okay.
So this book, we hired nothing but female illustrators and artists to depict the character working out or making a healthy choice. And our thesis of Sister Girl is that she could morph into any woman in her bloodline, which means she could look like any woman she wants to.
Okay.
Okay. So that opened it up for the artists to be able to draw her in different styles and different treatments. And we said, just give her a headband, give her a gold headband so we know it's her. And the book does have tables in it for measuring your diet, for measuring how your body modifies after it works out, for making, it's got blank pages where you could do your own inscription, your own journaling. You put a collage in there, or you may be working with a fitness trainer. So it's really a resource book. Looks like a comic book, but it's a personal care it's a personal care book.
Okay. So well, now we're getting very close to the top of the hour here. I'm trying to fit so much in, but there is one other category in your breadth of work, going green in the city.
Yeah. Yeah. I was
Yes.
really involved with.
Tell us briefly about that one.
Okay. That book is about simple, sustainable practices you could do in the urban environment. And the
Okay.
characters are called buttonheads. Another thing I used to do at the public schools, I used to sponsor our conservation club, and we used to do a lot of sustainable activities. And I was also a cool globe artist. Like these huge globes were created as a fundraiser for the clubs, but also to bring attention to global warming and what we could do to circumvent what that could do to all of us.
Okay,
So that's why that book exists as a activity book, and in it has an activity where you can measure water use and waste in your home or in the school or in the church.
Okay, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. These are not just books of entertainment, but books of development to help develop our creativity, to help our brains, and so much information and engagement to be had with your work. This is absolutely wonderful. How would you, or I would say, what words of wisdom would you give to aspiring artists, if people are interested in going into this area of work?
Feel confident, surround yourself with a world that can connect to helping you feel complete as the artist you are in your ideas. Save everything. Do not think that scribble on a napkin when you're on a date doesn't mean anything. Save it. All these ideas slip out of you, and you want to save them because you'll look back at that napkin in a year and you'll build a whole world around it. And the other part is learn the legal parts of the industry.
Ah, okay. That's good. Learning the law. I had a friend that went to college to be a doctor, and when he finished, you figured, okay, he's done. Well, he said, no, I'm going to law school.
There you go. There you
you
go.
know,
Yeah.
because we do need to understand, and I think this plays into our lack of support of each other because
Yeah.
we
And,
don't
it,
understand the integral workings of everything that's going on.
and,
All
and
we see is that superficial level. I'm going to spend my money and I'm going to get something that I want, but we don't see all of the integral workings of that. And so
yeah.
that's very important advice.
And something that I want to say, see, when I worked as an illustrator, companies hired me to do what they wanted me to do. They told me what to draw, when to draw it, how to draw it, what time to turn it in, what materials to use, what size it had to be. And I said, yes.
Okay.
That didn't interfere with my creativity. That challenge expanded my technical capacity. Then I could take that and add it to my creativity. So
Sure.
people got to understand the job is not suppressing who you are. The job is called getting paid. You get paid and then you roll the money over and invest in your dream. And so that was how I played it. And so a lot of what I learned came from working for these companies.
Okay.
It wasn't from a classroom. So I learned while earning and what the whole navigation was to be a professional. So time management, meeting the deadline, all these kind of things, having written agreements. People forget a written agreement goes two ways. It says, I'm going to do what you expect me to do. And it says, you're going to pay me for doing it.
Absolutely. Wow, we are at the top of our hour. This has been a wonderful discussion. To our audience, to our family, we have to embrace this work. These Black comics. I'm sure there are other people out here. We have Brother Tutrel Onli that's here in Chicago. And we understand that the only place here in Chicago that's carrying your work right now is the Trading Post shop at
at the
the
DuSable
DuSable
Museum.
Museum, right?
Right.
Which is
Well,
at
I want to tell
5060
people.
Cottage. Pardon me?
I want to tell people just Google Black Age of Comics and see where that
Okay.
leads you. You
Okay.
know, and if you go to image, like if you do Black comic books and do images, then that'll help expose you to not just my company but other companies. And we operate a info site called blackageofcomics.com, which tells you about just what's going on around the country, actually, and in parts of Africa too, and in parts of the Caribbean. So you go to blackageofcomics.com to learn about the Black Age. You go to onlystudios.com to be able to buy our products.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, we have to embrace this work that you are doing. And we have been talking to some bookstores here in Chicago. So DuSable is not going to be the only place that's going to carry these books. We will definitely be letting you know about that. And what we would like to do is to make one of your books our book of the month. All right.
I will send it to you. They'll get an autograph copy.
Okay, I want you to tell me, I want you to tell us which one that you would like for us to select. Can you tell us that, about that? Whichever one.
Tales from the Rhythmic Zone.
Tales from the Rhythmic Zone.
Because that's
the one that I have right here.
Right there. That's the one.
Yep, Tales from the Rhythmic Zone. Okay, family. If you subscribe to RRGBC.org and our book giveaway, you at the end of the month could win a copy of this book. And along with it comes some beautiful trading cards. Okay, several in here. So please, what's your website again, Tutrel?
Onlystudios.com. That's OLI studios.com. And as a sidebar, now last year on the outer wall for a major exhibit at the Museum of Contemporary Art on Chicago Comics.
Wonderful.
So it's all on the website, so you'll see it.
Okay. And Janice Jones, the winner of our book of the month, we will be contacting you. And again, Tutrel, I want to thank you for taking your time to come on and talk about what you're doing. And I want to thank you for what you're doing. It's a wonderful work, beautiful work that you're doing.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure and inspirational.
Absolutely. All right. So good night, everybody.